So, Peter?
You have a 3-week backlog, stuff I imagine.
No, I wanted to start by talking about the reflexology that I did today.
You want to talk about your reflexology?
Well, so Erin, she talked about the reflexology thing, and I did it today, and for the first time. And so I was wanting to know how to do noticing with pain, because I was trying to. It just like that. It's like it's like there's such a strong sort of I don't know, interpretation. Right? It's not like my body is being damaged because it's therapeutic, right? But it's like I'm squirming around and cursing, and it's just. So I remember you were saying something about like pain is it's just a sensation, right? And so you can do noticing and just notice it as a sensation.
Sure.
Right?
The fact that you experience pain means you're already noticing it. If you didn't notice it, you wouldn't know it was happening.
Yeah.
And if the fact that there's interpretation present means you're noticing that. Just don't believe the interpretation. And you can notice yourself believing the interpretation. And how does that happen? In other words, the whole presence of the event is inconceivable. And it doesn't matter how many layers and complexities it seems to consist of. So maybe there's pain, there's interpreting the pain, there's thinking you're trying to notice while you're interpreting the pain and while there's pain. I mean, there's all of these sort of strata that you can isolate, that you can interpret as aspects of the event. But all of them are present actuality. If you want to work on developing noticing pain, I recommend you start with pain that's not too severe. Like pinch yourself, or have someone pinch you. not like brutally, but enough so that it hurts, but not like you're in agony. And then close your eyes, forget that it's pinching, and what is it that's present. Don't ask the question, just look at the question. And when you get good at that, then have someone hurt you a little more. And notice what's present then. I'm pretty soon you'll be able to put your hand through a meat grinder. And you'll be like, wow, amazing.
Shades of gray.
Amazing. I'll volunteer. I'll run the meat grinder for you. But noticing is not something you do. Noticing is something you notice. And you notice that you notice noticing by noticing the presence of experiencing. And you're always noticing the presence of experiencing, or there wouldn't be your experiencing present. So right now, right this second, is there experiencing present?
Yeah.
Well, so you're noticing that there's experiencing present. Now, forgetting about calling it experiencing, and forgetting about any sorts of concepts or ideas you may have about what that might be, notice that there's something present. What is it? And don't answer the question, just let it answer the question by demonstration. So what is this present that you're calling experience? What is this presence? Just feel it. It's pregnant with all sorts of implication. Just feel all that. And don't try to, if there's thoughts about it or interpretations or thoughts about what you're doing, don't try and suppress that. But that's happening over here. That doesn't get in the way of your feeling of the presence of this that is here.
And after the reflexology, I've been noticing how how it changes my state. You know? It's just very, you know, it's very different than usual. It's like there's a sort of frazzled rawness.
Well, you just were tortured, of course.
So that's easy enough to notice.
But change in states is not important. The states always are changing. So-called states are changing continually. But even if states are states, it's a fantasy. There's just a continual change of what you might call flavor that's ongoingly the case and is entirely unresolvable. So right now there's a flavor, whatever it is, you can't say what it is, you can't pin it down, and it's already morphed, it's already morphing, it's already changing. So you just notice that. It never doesn't change. It can't not change. Just the mood, the vibe, the flavor, whatever. And then we have all sorts of narratives of, oh, I had some coffee, and then all of a sudden they woke me up and gave me the jangles. But what is coffee? What is waking up? What is jangles? You know, all of these words and interpretations are create an imaginary caricature of something that is completely unspeakable, that is a directly present flavor, an infinite flavor that's entirely unresolvable. It's obvious, but you can't pin down what it is. And it doesn't have enough stability to pin down what it is, even if you could. So you just notice this continual infinite dynamism of flavor. And it doesn't matter whether you're thinking of it as just being with your experience or whether you're thinking of it as being with pain. I mean, pain is a real dynamism. You know, before your reflexology, there's not there. There's a certain flavor present, and all of a sudden, you know, she lays into you, and all of a sudden, wow, there's a big dynamism going on there. And then it moves, and all of a sudden the dynamism shifts. It's continuous shifting dynamism, and then she stops, and then the dynamism shifts. I mean, but it's ongoing. It's a cascade of weirdness, a cascade of unresolvability. And the mind may come up with narratives, oh, this is this, and this is that, and this is a reaction to that, and blah, blah, blah. But none of that is accurate. It's not rich enough, comprehensive enough to include all the depth of the qualities that are actually present. And it's what it actually is that matters, not what you're calling it.
I guess part of what was behind my question is there a way to notice so that I'm not bothered by the pain?
Always looking for an angle, eh? Always trying to duck out. Soon enough, you won't be bothered by any pain at all.
Thank you. But would that be like to not be bothered by the pain of their reflexology? Would that be as a result of an interpretation?
No. It's not a matter of not being bothered by it. It's a matter of not being bothered by the fact that you are bothered by it. So there's some pain and it's pissing you off and you really wish it would stop and it's driving you nuts. And is that okay? Or is that a genuine description of, or a genuine description, a possible description of the condition? You know, something's happening. I hate that it's happening. I wish it would stop. And is that a problem that you wish it would stop? And then all of a sudden you're not bothered by the fact that you're bothered. By the time something's present, you can't get rid of it. By the time you're bothered, you can't not be bothered. You can't change the past.
I have this hypnotherapist friend, not my head, but he.
You mean an inferior hypnotherapist?
Yeah.
That was a plug.
So he was bragging to me one day about how he went to the dentist and refused anesthetic, and then he hypnotized himself into feeling the waves of pain like waves of water in the ocean or something like that. Okay. And so that was, isn't that interpreting, or?
No, it's taking advantage of the partiality of perspective. The way experience seems to be depends upon the perspective from which it's observed, let's say. And this is not a very precise way to putting it. It's not literally a spatial perspective or something like that. But any and all experience is viewed simultaneously from a multiple of perspectives. So even when you're feeling pain, part of you is experiencing that, but not experiencing it as pain. So hypnosis, in this instance, you just try to shift your perspective to that perspective where it's not painful. By realizing that your experience is actually multidimensional. Your experience is not a single coherent thing. It's like a broken mirror. It's shattered. It's all different sorts of simultaneous, or let's say concurrent, well, simultaneous, same thing, concurrent versions. And if you're artful, and which hypnosis specifically takes advantage of, it's possible to kind of try to navigate, or by emphasis, one perspective over another perspective. So like right, this is how hypnosis works. So like right now, at this moment, part of you is asleep. It's a fact. Right now, at this moment, part of you is dreaming. And right now, at this moment, part of you is awake and attending to this conversation and so on and so forth. Now, it's possible to navigate essentially by suggestion. You say, I'm going to tune into the part of me that's asleep. And there's no limit to how deeply you can do that, depending on how artful you are. Or now I'm going to tune into the part of me that is dreaming. It's not hard at all. And it may seem like imagination at first, but it's not like that. Imagination is involved in it. But the way that works is there's not actually one coherent version of the experience you're experiencing right now. You're actually experiencing a very multi-level, very multi-dimensional experience concurrently. And you can it's possible to emphasize different aspects of that to some degree, to whatever degree. mean, that's what meditation is. A good meditator doesn't do something to meditate. A good meditator tunes into the portion of their consciousness where they're already in meditation. Right now, a portion of your experience is in deep meditation. So you don't need to shut stuff down and switch to meditation. You tune into that, and all of a sudden, you're in deep meditation. Okay, snap out of it.
I'm enjoying that.
Well, do it yourself then.
Just explain transmission.
2 for the price of 1. See, I told you it's multidimensional. You really get your money's worth here at the Open Doorway.
So is it possible to separate pain from hurt?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, depending on exactly what you mean by those 2 terms, but absolutely. I mean, suffering.
It hurts and I'm in pain.
Yeah, well, I mean, by hurts, I think you mean suffering. It's definitely possible to do that. You can experience pain and not suffer. Suffering is a reaction to it. Oh, this hurts. I wish it wouldn't. This shouldn't be happening to me. Oh, this is horrible. My life is ruined. How do I get out of this? All of that is a narrative. It's basically a story you're telling yourself about or concurrently with the presence of some stimulus that you're calling that is the pain. And yeah, they don't have anything to do with each other. They're not actually connected. They're just concurrent. So again, it's just a matter of, I mean, you can either tune into the one and emphasize it, or you can see that it's a story and see that it's all bullshit. It's not really about anything. It's just a claim. It's spin doctoring. It's like, Bush, like Trump saying, he's the greatest and he's the most intelligent man that ever lived and blah, 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 blah. It's like, it's just words. It's not actually about anything. So all this woe is me stuff is the same thing. The suffering is getting yourself worked up with a narrative. I mean, it's usually not done deliberately, of course, and it's not done, consciously in terms of putting the words together, but basically somewhere back in yourself, there's this some aspect of a story that's playing, that's saying, this sucks. And this sucks is a reaction to something. It's not the thing itself. So you hit a cut, and then it's like a child. Children, you give children an injection, and they burst into tears. And it's not so much that it hurts as that they feel assaulted. And now as an adult, I get an injection. I don't give a shit. Well, sure, yeah, it's a little poke, and I just it didn't happen, but it's not, who gives a shit? I don't burst into tears because I don't have that narrative.
But when you're in Gary's place where you go to somebody and you give them money to hurt you, they seem to be connected because he gave this woman money to hurt him.
Yeah.
And she gave him pain.
But the fantasy is that it wasn't pain. The fantasy is it's therapeutic. So that's another narrative. So there's the reality of the pain, and then there's the fantasy that it's the narrative that it's therapeutic, and there's the other narrative that this hurts, I hate it, I want to get away from it.
And yet I came here on my own people and gave her money to do this.
Yeah, what's wrong with me? Maybe I should rethink this next time.
You wait, I'm going to be super healthy in 2 weeks.
You going back to get more pain?
I'll go back tomorrow.
Oh my God.
See, that answers the whole issue right there.
That answers the question.
So that raises the issue of masochism. See, masochism is just another narrative. It really hurts. I like it.
It's really he's for the therapeutics.
Of course, but when that heaven's a sucker for that stuff.
So he's going to go to the part of his broken mirror that's well, and he's going to be there. And then he won't.
Sure.
Sure. Through this 10-day ordeal.
Or you could just go to the part of the mirror that's well without going through the pain. But you're a masochist. You like the pain.
I'm not as skillful in my self-hypnosis as So I need those 10 days of pain.
Enjoy.
It's every day for 10 days?
Hmm.
Holy shit.
She had someone there who was trying to, well, she's got liver cancer, and she's been there every day for 3 months.
Yeah, well, once you buy in, then you're stuck.
Oh, so it didn't work after 10 days.
You would think. You would think. Yeah. But Erin told me it would work, so I believe her.
I'm not going to address that. I'm not going to touch that. Don't ever turn on the Home Shopping Network on TV. Don't do it. Do yourself a favor.
That's real pain.
The nice man said, if I bought all of this, I would be happy. And my problem would be all I have to do is send $100,000 to the number at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, just kind of like there's this channel that's always on in my brain about like, well, all these people said that I would benefit from doing such and such. That's like with the ayahuasca.
Sure. Or join a fundamentalist Christian church. They'll tell you it's going to benefit you. It's going to save your soul, for God's sakes.
We'll go to Satsang.
Or go to Satsang.
Get enlightened.
My hair said that after a couple times, I would be enlightened.
See, so you're
See how
good.
well that works.
So actually, hypnosis is really good for you because we know you're very suggestible. So you can take advantage of that if you're skillful.
I've got this wonderful bridge. You can
So the old phrase, die before you die. I mean, I get it at times, but to what extent is that possible to just completely really get that you're being lived?
It's completely possible. It's not as simple as being lived. This is not life. It's not anything really. I mean, nothing that you can say. So the idea that you're alive, kill it, because it's a shtick you're selling yourself.
Well, that's what happens in those moments. It's like really.
Yeah. Is this life? Is this the afterlife? Is this death? Is it a dream? Is it? I mean, you can't answer these questions. And if you explore this very thoroughly, you come to see that what this is, it always is, regardless of what happens. What this is, you find the common denominator of what it is. That is always the case. It's the case when you're awake. It's the case when you're healthy. It's the case when you're sick. It's the case when you're asleep. It's the case when you're dreaming. But what this is never changes. And what this is, it never changes. And so your life had no beginning. If you could trace your experience backwards, the fantasy would be there was nothing, it didn't exist, and all of a sudden at one point there was like someone threw a light switch and all of a sudden you were there in the room or whatever, or coming out the birth canal or who knows what. But it's not like that. It's a continuum. It's like waking up. When you wake up from deep sleep, it's not like all of a sudden someone throws a switch and you're awake. You can't say what it is. It's a weird morphing of apparition that at a certain point recognizes itself as what it calls being awake. But it's a continuum, and it's a continuum of one thing. And death will be the same thing, as you'll find out. When you're on your deathbed, the experience of dying will be occurring within your experience.
Right.
And as you actually die, that will be occurring within your experience. I mean, you won't be calling it your experience, and you won't be calling it within. But it'll just be a morphing of the same thing.
Good, don't get anything.
No, exactly, obviously. But you don't have to call it anything right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, it's more about just, there's just this sense of not, just, how the fuck do you say this shit? How do you do this?
You just, bullshit.
Okay.
Just start moving your mouth and your tongue and.
It's just if you're not this, but you're this, that's kind of a death. In and
Yeah,
of itself.
But you're not this. It's arbitrary what you are.
Yeah, but I mean, you're all of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a death.
Of course it is. It's a it's the death of any particularity.
Yeah.
It's the death of a person. It's the death of life. It's the death of time. It's the death of beginnings. It's the death of endings. But nothing. But you don't lose anything. Nothing changes.
No.
It never was any of that.
But it's just, I don't know. Just die before you die thing. It just seems like whatever I'm tasting of it, there's more. And it's the secret that hasn't totally died yet.
Well, yeah, but all of that is too much. I mean, basically, "die before you die" is a clever slogan that someone said. It's not true.
Yeah, all right.
I mean, nothing, and there's all these clever slogans and spiritual bits of advice and all of that. But at best, they're cute, they're catchy. But that doesn't mean that they're absolute truth. Absolute truth, and it is this, and it cannot be said. So therefore, anything that can be said is not true. And so that of course takes all this fabulous, profound spiritual sayings and throws them in the trash heap. But the good thing is you don't need to say it.
Yeah.
It can't be said, but you don't need to say it. You have it. You are it. There's nothing else, and you should see that absolutely self-verifyingly as the fact. It's the sole fact, and you have it. You are it. So who gives a shit what you say or don't say?
Well, like today, I kind of noticed like when I was feeling that it really was just it's just a perspective of what was happening, not anything.
Yeah, personal. Nothing matters. Personal is fine. Identified is fine. Unidentified is fine. Impersonal is fine. Ecstasy is fine. Being in a pissed off rage is fine. It just doesn't matter. It's like whatever you dream about is fine. You can have a nightmare, or you can have a sexy dream, or you can have a boring dream, or you can have a weird dream, and it's just a dream. So what difference does it make what it looks like?
Then mountain, no mountain thing. So with like, I think about like human relations and emotion, and so you see. You see the non-existence of like separateness, right? And then ultimately you sort of get over sort of attachment to like everything being one thing or like fixation on that, and then you go back into like playing the game but without being invested in it, or playing the different games but without being invested in them. So
You can put it that way. I mean, you know, in the no mountain phase, there's not anything.
In the what?
In the no mountain phase of the
No,
of the equation of the narrative. So you start off, and I'm Peter Brown, and I'm here, and I'm in my horrible life, and life sucks, and hey, what is all this spirituality stuff about? And oh, look, there's this wonderful, you know, no mountain, and then you start reading books and listening to koans and arguing with people and being sucked into all sorts of gullible situations and so on and so forth. And then sooner or later, all of a sudden, you have a vision. You see, oh, Jesus Christ. None of this is what I thought it was. Everything is wrong. Everything. Peter Brown is not what I thought. His crappy life isn't what I thought. Other people aren't what I thought. Relationships aren't what I thought. You know, chains of events aren't what I thought. But then, after a while, nothing goes away. You see that it's not what you thought. But, you know, but like, here's a perfect example. There's no room here. There's no people here. There's no space and time here. There's no event here. And yet here we are sitting having this conversation. So that's the entire thing right there. In the beginning, if it was just, first as a mountain, I would just, well, here I am at this talk. What's this about? What are we talking about anyway? It sounds kind of weird to me. I can't quite follow what we're talking about. But there's a mountain, right? And then, wait a minute. There's nothing here. I can't say anything about it. And yet nothing goes away. But nothing comes back to replace the nothing that didn't go away. So there's no room, there's no people, there's no space, and there's no time. And yet here we are having this conversation, but it's not like all of a sudden there started being people and there started being time and space. It's just still no people. And yet here's this conversation.
and then the third stage is not just like the realization is present where it wasn't before, but there's also embracing the seeming separateness.
There's nothing to embrace. Nothing goes away. But since you know that it's not anything, the fact that it seems to be present is, who gives a shit?
So you describe it as who gives a shit, but it's not like there's not like a sort of a new sort of playful responsiveness.
It may be playful, it may be pissed off, it may be, you know, it can be anything, it doesn't matter. But even that is not that, so it doesn't matter. Nothing happens to replace it. Nothing goes away, but nothing replaces when you see that there's nothing here. And then whatever that happens to look like and whatever the emotional tenor of personalities seem to manifest and so on and so forth is irrelevant, because it's not really that.
Is there an abiding goodwill towards your experience?
Maybe there's an abiding goodwill, maybe there's an abiding being pissed off, who knows? But it doesn't matter, because even if it is goodwill, it's not really that. And even if it is pissed off, it's not really that. Nothing is really anything without being negated. Really, that's really true. And when you see that's true, then nothing is really anything. But it's not negated. So everything is here, but nothing's here. Because it's not everything. It never was everything. It's this. Precisely. Like everything, but it isn't.
And the stuff on here is about like the big heart openness to what is.
I'm sorry, what? I just had a moment of dizziness. What did you just say?
I'm sorry, that's my spiritual energy. So that's the people.
It makes me dizzy, confused, and a little nauseous.
So like the Buddhists, they talk about heart, mind, and big heart and openness and but like I was reading Jed McKinnon, he was saying, oh yeah, this isn't about heart at all, right? And it's kind of your perspective. Right?
No, it's not about anything in particular. When big heart, big mind, or whatever is a metaphor, it's a euphemism. The important thing isn't the euphemism. The important thing is what it's actually a euphemism of. And saying it's not about heart is not, again, it's see what he's talking about. The issue is not whether or not it's about heart. The issue is, what is this? And when you see what is this, the notion of heart or no heart is totally irrelevant. Yeah, the notion of mind, big mind, or small mind, or open mind, or closed mind is totally irrelevant.
Yeah, I just, I guess where my question comes from, specifically is like, it's like, maybe a couple of years ago, I felt like, like very loving,
sure.
And then that shifted into like, I could give a shit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or who the fuck cares, right? Or whatever, like, and then I kind of wonder if that is like sort of that's like a resistance, right?
No, none of those is true. They're just energy flavors, and this manifests as an infinite dynamism of energy flavors to actually being any one particular way or another. So you can spin doctor it as, oh, it was all love and openness, and then it was all piss off or whatever. But that's the spin doctrines aren't true. They're oversimplifications of something that was beyond that was not what you're describing it as. Every description is completely inaccurate. So when you talk about anything, you talk about heart, open heart, or closed heart, or feeling love, or fuck you, being pissed off. None of those are actually true. They don't include the fullness of what it actually is.
It seems like the lack of truth in those is like there's a sense of self at the center of it.
That's not the point. The point is it's partializations. Sense of self is just another partialization. Sense of self is not particular. It doesn't have a privileged position. It's just another partialization. So here I have this. Bang. Right? And I can partialize it as, oh, we're sitting in Kensington. And that's not untrue, but it doesn't capture and comprehensively include this. And I can say anything else about it, and it may not be untrue, but it's not true because it doesn't include what this actually is, which is the fullness of what it is. Because this is inclusive. This includes itself. And all these partializations, I can say, oh, but this is me, it's myself over here, my little perspective, and I'm seeing it from over here. That's not true. Because it's again, it's a partialization, and this cannot be partialized. That may be true. I may say, well, gee, I seem to be here, and I seem to be Peter Brown, and I seem to have a localized perspective, but all of those are partializations of something which is vastly more than that. And the moreness is just this that's right here. It's not some abstract moreness, it's just very, very concrete moreness. You can't say what this is. It's right here, this is it. Yeah. Can you say anything more about it that's true other than this is it? This is this is? Anything else you say is partializing it. Mind you, it may seem to have an infinity of apparent partializations or flavors, seemingly partialized, partial flavors. There's parts, but the parts don't actually exist because they aren't. You can't extract them from the whole. It's like a stew. Once the stew is cooking for 3 days, you can't take all the carrots out because it's in everything. And this is pre-cooked. It's pre-cooked to what it is, and all the ingredients are one with everything. So that being the case, there are no ingredients as such that are of this and of this and of this. There's just this.
My daughter can take the carrots out.
Well, she can pretend to.
She pretends, right? Well, that's what partialization is.
Yeah, exactly. Pretense. Let's pretend I'm Peter Brown. I mean, we learn this as infants. You're born in the world, and your first 30 seconds after you're out of the chute, there's no parts. It's just wow, right? And then you learn to play all these games of partializing. Oh, I'm Peter, and I'm a human being, and I'm a boy, and this is mom, and this is dad, and this is my house, and this is this, and this is that. No, that's a car, and this is this, and but it's just a game that we learn that doesn't actually create separate parts. It just pretends to.
So there's no separate parts, and there's no parts that can be improved upon.
What does improved upon mean?
Going to the reflexologist.
Well, going to the reflexologist can happen, but it's not going, and it's not a reflexologist. You can't say what it is. And the notion that it's improving would mean that you can know what condition it's in. It has to be in some condition in order to be improved into some other condition, and you can't pin down exactly what condition it's in the first place. Because you can't pin down any condition. Every condition is infinite. It's unresolvable. It's like trying to pin down what is the mood, what's the flavor of this right here, right now. It's rich with flavor, but you can't say what it is. You can't pin it down. And it's already morphing. This is morphing continually. Is it morphing into something better or something worse? But you can't say because you can't know what it is now. So how can you know if now is better or worse? So the fantasy of improvement is based upon the fantasy of partialization that you can partialize what some condition is, so then you can imagine some partialized improved condition that you're trying to achieve. But both of those are fantasies. It's not to say that you may not be able to surf this. You may not be able to navigate within it to some extent towards qualities that you feel like you prefer. But you can't say for sure that you're doing it. You can't say for sure how you're doing it, and you can't say for sure what any of it is. So like I can say, I don't particularly, I'm bored here, I don't like this, so I'm going to hypnotize myself and go to where I'm asleep or where I'm meditating, and all of a sudden, you know, and then I'm not tuned in. But what really happens? Who knows? You can't say. I can do it, and if I think I want to, I'm free to try to avail myself of that. But the description of that as being that, or me doing something, or me achieving something, is a complete, you know, fabrication. The entire thing's mystery. Functioning may be viable, but it's complete mystery as to what it is, and even whether it is functioning. I can stand up and walk around in a circle and come and sit back down, but I can't say for sure what it is I've done, even that I've done it, or certainly not how I did it. So, you know, navigating through it within this is like that. I mean, that's the essence of what might be called magic, which is to take advantage of the potentiality of seemingly navigating within reality in ways that you seem to have a preference towards. But you can't say that it really is that. And you can't say how it is, what it is, and how it is, whatever it is, and so on and so forth. The entire thing's a mystery. But still in all, you can seem to participate with that in whatever way that happens. Or not.
As I say, I know it when I see it.
Yeah, I know when I see it. I may not know what, but I know what I like.
It's sort of it's a little bit incorrect to, I mean, just because you can't absolutely describe what you experienced. Just the fact that you experienced it, that's the most important part. That's the evidence. It's, you know, it's solid evidence.
Yeah, it's evidence of itself.
Of itself, right.
Yeah. The entire thing is always evidence of itself. And your functioning is evidence of itself, but it's not, that doesn't mean that it really is you or it really is functioning, and so on and so forth. I
mean, you know, I mean, magic is sort of a good way of sort of describing that. I mean, you know, maybe the whole universe is just a trick, but I mean, if you see a magician doing something, you saw it, you know, you experienced it.
Yeah.
You know? Not only that, I mean, you could almost call magic sort of a miracle.
Of course it's a miracle. Everything's a miracle.
You know, what we experience.
Miracle is what we got.
Yeah, that's what I think.
So in your experience, it's like you're always seeing the whole mirror, and you're also very aware of like the many different shards of it.
The mirror doesn't have a hole. It's not coherent. It's not one thing. It's not some big thing of which you're only seeing a part now. It's like a dream. The entirety of the dream is present in the dreaming. You can dream you're stuck in a closet, and your experience of being in a closet is the entirety of reality. But maybe you're dreaming you're the size of a quark, and so the closet is bigger than you know the largest galactic cluster that exists. You know, that's right.
Is that an example of magic, or you just
Sure.
shifted to?
Sure, dreaming is an example of magic.
Oh, what do
Shifting
you-
perspective. Magic is all about shifting perspective. Think of magic as hypnosis. The essential way hypnosis works is you have a seed suggestion which acts like a fulcrum, and then the imagination seizes on that and actualizes it. And as it actualizes it, the experience tries to simulate that as actual experience. You know, waves his arms around and says you're falling asleep or whatever. And so the consciousness hears, oh, I'm falling asleep. And then the imagination consciously seizes on that and tries to simulate it. Oh, what would my experience look like if I was falling asleep? And if the whole thing takes, all of a sudden you're experiencing that you're asleep. You don't necessarily fall asleep. Or, you know, you are a brilliant, with lots and lots of experience. You know, all of a sudden you sort of feel, yeah. You know, someone says, boy, you're just a real jerk. You know, you're clueless and you're arrogant and all of a sudden it's like, you shrink, you know. You know, none of it is true. It's just taking a fulcrum of a notion, and then the imagination creates an experiential, you know, dream where that seems to be the flavor of it. It actualizes it. I mean, that's how everyone gets in the spiritual problematic situation to begin with. You know, you're hypnotized to think you're a person and you're limited and you have a short life and you suffer and you have pain and you're a failure and blah, 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 blah. And then of course you look at that and you say, God, this sucks. What can I do? And then you hear about this wonderful thing called spirituality that promises of, wow, there's something out there that can fix this or improve it or make it better or get me out of it or something. It's like, oh yeah, I want a piece of that. But the problem in the first place doesn't really exist.
The other problem is that it's painful sometimes.
Yeah, true. You know, but pain isn't really pain, and suffering is just being with pain in a way that is negativizing it. You could say resistance to it, and as we all know, resistance is futile. Many people are Trekkies. What's up with that?
So really good salespeople are magicians.
Of course,
You know.
absolutely. Politicians are magicians. You know, people that are trying to pick up other people in bars are magicians. The whole thing is magicians. It's a question of whether or not they're good magicians or not. Everything's a con job.
What you do with us?
Yeah, con job.
Con job?
Yeah.
I thought you were unconning us.
Well, I'm using the tricks of conning to hopefully trick you into noticing that you're actually not conned. That your actual condition is not affected by whatever con you've been sold at the moment. If words are being used, then hypnosis is taking place. Because of the very nature of the mind is it seizes on words and tries to simulate them and feel, what would it feel like if that was true? If I say, life is a grand, wonderful openness, right away, instantly, the mind unconsciously, unintentionally, just seizes on that and creates some kind of a version of that where, oh yeah, I can feel it, yeah, it really is. But it's not about what you're being conned into. It's about that the conning just it takes advantage of the fact that this really isn't anything at all. So therefore, it can seem to be all any which way. So what I try and point out is the flexibility and unresolvability of this. So then you see that all of these different versions of it aren't hierarchical. So you get conned into some point of view and then conned into some other point of view. You haven't actually gained or lost anything.
So to speak is always to con and to manipulate.
Yes. Not necessarily in a malicious sense.
It's not what you want.
No, it's not.
It's also defining.
Well, that's the point. Since it defines it, whoever says words is forcing off a definition implied by the words on whoever hears those words, just unconsciously because of this hypnotic quality of mind. The mind instantly tries to simulate whatever notion it's exposed to. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just a thing.
But the words aren't actually causing the fantasy to take place, right?
No. It's the nature of mind that causes that. It's the nature of mind to dance with itself. And it's always looking for what's the next step. And so if there's a seed sort of to crystallize around, then the mind will instantly try to crystallize around it.
But to say that anything's causing the fantasy isn't.
No, it's not causing it in a simplistic causal sense. But there can be but it's all interrelated. But then again, there's no separate elements to be interrelated, so it's not like that either. It's it's infinitely weird, and as soon as you try to deconstruct it or structuralize it or find out how it works, it evaporates like a mirage.
Confidence is self-hypnosis, and lack of confidence is also self-hypnosis.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a difference. Like you're very confident about what you say, more or less.
I'm confident about what I say because I have no responsibility for it. When I talk, I'm like describing something that I'm seeing outside of a window. So I'm not asserting it so that I have to defend it. I'm just looking at what I see and I'm describing what I see. So what I see bears the responsibility for being what it is.
So there,
I mean, I may or may not do a better or worse job of describing it, but still in all, I'm doing my best to describe it as evocatively as I can. So I'm like a middleman. It's not like this is philosophy according to Peter Brown, you know, and I have to spit it out and then I have to defend it. There's nothing to defend. It's the nature of this itself that supports itself. You know, it's like don't shoot the messenger. It's not, you know, what this is. All I'm doing is describing this.
so there is truth, and truth is,
Well, I would say there is actuality. Truth is a referential notion to some extent. It depends. These words are all slippery and they have multidimensional meanings. So, you know, you could say that one of the meanings of truth is reality, but I would say, generally speaking, the implication of truth is something that refers to something else with fidelity or with accuracy. So if I say it's true that you're over there sitting in a chair, would be really true if there really was a you and you were there was an over there and it was sitting in a chair, and so on and so forth. But that's not true. That's a partialization. That's one way of describing what is here, but it's a very partialized way of describing it, and omits most of what is here. So it's not true in the sense of actual. It's not actual. Only one thing is actual, and that's this, which includes, or may include, you being over there sitting in a chair, but it includes so much, an infinity more than that, most of which contradicts there being a you sitting in a chair over there. I mean, that's what I mean when I say this is unresolvable. You can't partialize it, and as soon as you partialize it, you create, you know, a really, really minuscule. You're asserting that some very, very small portion of something, as seen from some very specified point of view, is this, can be abstracted out of that accurately, and that's not the case.
so it's like this sort of multi-dimensional sort of.
It's infinitely dimensional. There's infinite dimensions, you could say, that this presents as, but none of them have any separate existence, and none of them have any definability. And even if they are them, can't really be found. But it kind of seems like it might be that way. But again, if you say anything, you're partializing this, and this cannot be partialized. So nothing that can be said is actually true, is actually accurate. So at best, you just kind of evocative poetry, which isn't completely true, but it may have some relevance or utility as a jumping off point to noticing what is actual. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? We'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Really? I know what you meant by this. All right.
Do you know, is it where you are?
Yeah.
Really, huh?
Yeah.
I have just the opposite problem.
What?
Yeah, very dry in my house, a year or something. Your house is an old one, it has radiators or something?
It's old. I don't know what the situation is like. Well, that's showing instead of the windows.
Oh, yeah, that compensation, yeah. Hmm.
Primary colors, almost no primary colors. It's like, I could. I moved in, there's absolutely nothing in the kitchen. The other guy had no kitchen stuff. How's it going with him? Good. Is there a stove in there? I spend too much time on it though. Yeah. When you move, you're gonna miss it.
It looks like a sort of a cubist art piece. I'd expect to see that, you print that and blow it up on the wall, sell it to the Whitney or something.
It's really, but it feels like we're in there too. They totally lie about this enlightenment stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, 30 plus years ago.
yeah, all the spirituality is a big sham.
It's like the signs on the John is road. And they say,
You think you're on a road,
Jerusalem, man.
yeah, you think you're on a road and you think you're going somewhere. But if you're a good yogi, you'll discover there's no road and you're not going anywhere. But that doesn't eliminate the road and the fact that you're going somewhere.
My sister's house is just above where all of the birds are.
Oh, really?
And rocks just came down.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
It's above it.
Where is she?
Well, they're showing us, they keep showing, all the news has this big street,
Yeah.
which is the street you pick up to turn off the door.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know, if it's also coming there too. And
Really?
they can't go anywhere because all the streets are
Yeah.
closed.
Oh, yeah, bizarre. Oh, yeah.
The ways are closed and
Yeah. A little mini disaster.
well, it's really interesting. It's just like gorgeous. Little envelope in the wall of all these beautiful places. And now it's just a big murky.
When the lawsuits start flying, a friend of mine had a house and he lived And there was, he lived in there was a big mudslide. And it mudslid above him, onto him, and mudslid from his house down. And the downhill neighbors all sued the uphill neighbors because there's some aspect of liability or something. And it's just a
Usually, I
nightmare.
meant to be early, but there's rain, it doesn't matter, it's like.
Yeah.
Like
So
12
it's
p.m.
really
is
not
already
like
All the good stuff happened there.
flood insurance. It's, I think insurance was the acts of God. So, which means nobody's taking any responsibility.
But still, there's liability laws.
I was doing great, all this talk about sleep, I was quite grateful. I was like, oh my God. You guys talk about sleep, that sounds wonderful.
I like the mustache and the beard, Jimsy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Maybe I'll keep it. But it's just so hard to trim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you need to get yourself.
You got one of those,
I guess so.
one of those, you know, things.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
They
a
have one of
buzz
those
head.
guards. Yeah.
It's not hard.
So you use one of those?
Yeah, has different little heads on it, you know?
Yeah.
You can do all this stuff here.
Oh, what size? Like when you're trimming your beard, you do like the same length for the whole thing?
No, not exactly. You sort of decide, after a while, you sort of figure it out. But I use one that's not very close, you know, sort of medium close compared to. And I do the whole thing with that just to get any stray things that are sticking out.
Yeah.
And then I take one that's almost just about as close as you can get without being just a razor, the teeth itself. And I do that kind of carefully. And again, I'm not going against the grain, I'm going with it. So if my head goes down, so I'm taking off the tops.
Oh, okay, sure.
And then underneath, I tend to do a little bit more. Sides, you know,
Oh,
figure it out.
Yeah, maybe I'll try that. Because this is real thin, and then this is thick, right? So I've tried in the past, like trimming it up, and this goes down to nothing, and then I still have it. So, yeah.
Well, there's a million ways to play with it, but it's just.
Yeah.
So what was the motivation for growing the beard?
Oh, it was just real cold, and I wasn't around people really, except for the family, so I could go through that awkward stage of life here. So, and there wasn't really, I couldn't find a razor for a while. Have you grown beards before? But you don't like it on yourself, or it's too much trouble, or?
My wife doesn't like it. I would have a beard in a heartbeat. If it wasn't for her.
Really? Why don't you like it?
Well, and he doesn't need it.
It's all the rage nowadays. That's the fashion fad.
Yeah, long hair and long beards.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Did you ever have a beard?
Oh, yes. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I've never had one that when I was young, I had a beard. 50 days. I remember I really got into it. Tugging for it.
Combing it is always fun.
Yeah.
It's just nice to have that tug.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, beards are fun.
But what I don't like about my beard is it's gray down here. And then I tried to color it a little bit, but that's hard.
That'll be cool too. You'll like it.
Yeah.
You can dominate.
Sure.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I can do that.
Or not. Just keep gray. Did you keep the audio on during the breaks?
During the what?
The breaks?
On the, yeah, well, not in this, but in the videos, right, continuously. Because I can't stop and restart it to make a second again. On this, the NSA is hearing every word that's being said. Yeah, right, yeah, everyone read out the social security numbers and credit card numbers right away.
I found that out.
She's doing really good, and all her friends are coming and helping, and it's just. Peter,
Not all.
He has a really great blog. He's he became sort of famous because he and Christopher Hitchens, were really big atheists. But it's not necessarily, I know that, for instance, I think he might have even gone to India with Sydney. He does have a science degree. But he has a really great blog, and he interviews interesting people.
Oh, fine.
I'll send you that.
I may as well be on like this.
Peter, would you go so far as to say that you have values? That there's things that you value? Or there's...
Well, the answer is complex. I could say certain aspects of my nature and my personality have all sorts of very strong values. But and those are partializations. So there's also other portions of my being that don't have those values and that don't have any values, or that have completely different values, you could say. And everyone's the same. Everyone's like that. You are a fragmented being. You have all sorts of aspects and layers and dimensions to yourself, and they're not particularly coherent or in agreement with other aspects and dimensions of yourself. So there may be a more superficial aspect you used to identify with, say, your personality or whatever. But in actuality, there's more to you which may diverge more or less, and even very extremely, from other aspects you're more familiar with. That's why people can be self-destructive and so on. Someone may be really, really careful, to do things, but then they may have something else they do which is really stupid and self-destructive, and they just feel the compulsion to do it because there's a part of them that wants to do that, which doesn't agree with the part of them. The part of them has a value that's really good, whereas that part you may be identifying with may not feel that way, and so on and so forth.
And when they go through therapy and they no longer do those self-destructive things, it's because they've been hypnotized into I don't know, inhibiting that part of themselves?
I don't know, not necessarily. I think a lot of, I don't know. As soon as you try to talk about this stuff and say it's this way or it's that way, you know, you end up spouting untruths. So. I did a lot of therapy myself, so I have some personal experience of that, at least as it was for me. And I can say that for me, in general, my experience of therapy was a kind of had the effect of being kind of like a relaxing into, you know, relaxing into all the chaotic aspects of myself, or let's say relaxing more into chaotic aspects of myself rather than trying to insist I was integrated or I made sense. So it's a kind of it has the effect of a kind of a loosening up and a degree of self-forgiveness with whatever the way one happens to be, regardless of what that is, as opposed to a pre-therapy mindset where there's a kind of a defensive insistence on I'm this and things are a certain way, and you know.
That has to be remedied.
Well, it's just a kind of it's more of a settling. It's more of a kind of a reality check of well, you know, settling into the way you really are. to whatever degree or whatever. I mean, I could say it's sort of subjectively, it sort of had that sort of flavor.
There's that, there's that suffering thing again, the idea that it shouldn't be this way, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe even worse is the denial of denying that it is that way.
Well, those go together, right?
Yeah, perhaps, yeah. Anyhow, but again, since in actuality, you can't ever get to the bottom of what any of that is or how it happens, it's not particularly important or relevant. But it may be useful in some cases for people that have a difficult time with their personality. It may be beneficial in some ways in terms of navigating to a way that feels less problematic to some degree. But again, you can't say what any of that is or how it works. In a way, yoga is the ultimate extreme of that, where you see conclusively and comprehensively what everything is, and that none of it matters and none of it has any importance. So it's the flavor of it is an ultimate acceptance and forgiveness without there needing to be any actual acceptance or actual forgiveness.
What do you mean by the second half of that? Without there needing to be actual acceptance and actual forgiveness?
Because there's nothing to accept and there's nothing to forgive, and there's no one to accept it and there's no one to forgive it. It's not like that. In other words, acceptance is still is very structural, where there's a me and there's something and I'm accepting it. And doesn't work with itself. It never departs from itself, but it doesn't fall to all. look at what this is and let it show you what it is. And you will come to see how it is, and that answers all questions and removes all confusion. But it doesn't remove confusion by eliminating or solving it. It removes confusion by showing you that there's nothing but confusion. So therefore, confusion is only confusion if you think you're supposed to not be confused.
Right.
But since there's nothing but confusion, then the notion that you're supposed to not be confused is absurd, and so there's no problem. Confusion is just the incoherence of and the unresolvability of this. You could say this is infinite confusion. And so the whole issue is just absolved because it's irrelevant.
Not acting with no confusion is, that's just an example, I guess, that comes to mind now, but there's two essential flavors, it seems. The one where you're not confused because you're not thinking about any other options out there, because it doesn't matter, ultimately. And there's one that's, you think you know what's going on, and so you're operating in a specific way. But it seems more limited and partial. So if you understand, so you have to do some work and you have a certain perspective, this should be done that way. So you're not confused about it. Just do it that way. But you can get hung up about it if it doesn't go that way.
But that's using confusion in the notion in a kind of a functional sense within a game structure. In other words, the confusion is to what any of it is. So I'm supposed to, I say I'm supposed to do something. I'm supposed to, move this over there. But what is this? What is over there? What is moving it? And those questions are unresolvable. So it's confusion. And yet in practical terms, it's very simple as long as I can do it. I can't say how I do it, and I can't say even what doing it is. And I can't say what I am that seems to be doing it. So it's not really an issue. Confusion is interesting from a yogic point of view in terms of the fact that what is actual is fundamentally unresolvable and fundamentally incoherent. The sort of garden variety of confusion of one confused as to how to do something, and now I understand, so you explained it to me, is neither here nor there, because that's just within the context of a game structure. We're playing Monopoly, and I say I'm confused what to do, and you say, well, you roll the dice and you pick up this thing and you count some places and you put your thing down and you go, oh, okay, right now I'm not confused. But that's not addressing the issue yogically, which is, what is this? In other words, what's the bigger picture? From within any partialized context, there can seem to be all these various qualities which seem relevant, but they aren't really there, and they aren't really relevant because the partialized context doesn't actually exist as such. But then these partialized contexts are fine as far as they go for particular game structures.
So isn't one of the problems is that we take that sort of attitude from the game structure into seeking yogic.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a misunderstanding the nature of yoga. That's thinking yoga is just a bigger game. Yoga is not a game. Yoga is the question, which is, what is the game? What is any game? So any game can be a good jumping off point for yoga, but right away, if you're doing yoga, well, you jump off the game and into the unknown. If you drag the game with you, then you're just playing another game or the same game. So that's not really yoga per se. Although ultimately, even playing games is yoga, because ultimately, all experience leads to reality, because there's nothing nowhere else for it to lead. But it's a matter of efficiency, you might say, seeming efficiency. The yogi is, in a sense, very arrogant and very greedy. The yogi wants it all, and he wants it now. As opposed to, well, maybe in 100,000 lifetimes, if I sort of bumble along, you know, struggling through these crappy lives, you know, sooner or later I'll wise up. The yogi says, no, I want to wise up now. And he's arrogant enough to think that might even be a possibility. I can do this. I can be all powerful. But successful yoga above all demands intelligence, and intelligence is, you know, enables the ability to see through games to actuality. Sufficient critical awareness to be able to notice the difference between games and the non-game context that games exist in and consist of.
Non-game.
Yeah. Or extra game. So any game. Let's say take Monopoly. Okay, we have a Monopoly board, we put it on the floor, we lay out the pieces, and we're playing Monopoly, right? There's the rules, and we refer to the rules, and we argue with each other about what the rules mean. So that's playing Monopoly. But where is that happening? Where it's happening is not in the game. It's outside the other game. You know, what is it made of? That's not within the game. That's beyond the purview of the game. Who's playing the game? You know, is not within the game, it's outside the game. And reality is always exists. Reality is the ultimate context of any and all game structures. And game structures are anything that one thinks one is doing, or for that matter, that one thinks one is. So all identifications and all partializations and all narrative descriptions of who one is and what one's doing are all game structures. And they all occur and within and consist of this actual context, actuality.
So it's outside mind. It's outside interpretation.
It's outside everything, but it's also inside. It's beyond. Beyond is better than outside, because outside implies not inside. It excludes it, but beyond it. Reality is beyond the Monopoly game, but it doesn't exclude the Monopoly game. Monopoly is also beyond Monopoly. Or, you know, instead of saying Monopoly, we could say my struggle, my aspirations to enjoy my life, or to be me, or to get along with people, or to, you know, whatever. Any narrative description of, you know, what you think is happening and who you think is participating in it, and so on and so forth.
We're never going to play Monopoly with you.
That's for sure. Because I'm never going to play Monopoly. Besides, I'll cheat.
How'd you argue?
Yeah, right.
What we do.
I play the ultimate card. This isn't really Monopoly.
We used to play horse racing with Monopoly set.
See?
It was really.
See, it's not really Monopoly.
So it's like whenever you think of anything or interpret something, you're creating a reality.
Yeah, you're basically creating a game structure. And that reality exists within and is made of actual reality, actuality, of course. So the game structure is a partialization of and within actuality, which includes more than that game structure. It includes the game structure, but it includes more than that game structure. It includes all of itself. So you could say it is within any system. It is the nature of any system, and it is beyond any system. Actuality is. And any system can be yourself, your personality, your body, your life, your history, any project you're doing, or anything that you can describe, really.
Just out of curiosity, what are you doing right now?
I don't know.
Or what are you experiencing?
I shouldn't possibly say this. Yes, I hear.
Well, I think
Sure, thought might be present. But even when thought's present, there's beyond thought also present. So even when you're thinking, you're also not thinking.
I'm not doing a lot of things. So that's-
Me neither. Thank God.
Doing everything.
There's always a smart ass in the room. There's always a smart ass in the room.
Let's see if I can get this left.
Hesh has a question, it's too shy to ask.
Yeah, I'm a waltzy, what's it called? The flower?
Wallflower?
I'm a wallflower. Wilting and whatever.
In terms of these like multi-dimensional realities or multi-dimensional perspectives, how is it that one can? It sounds like you said earlier, like it's like someone chooses to accentuate one.
Right?
How can it be?
What do you mean, how can it be? You coexist within a multitude of perspectives simultaneously now. So, and yet certain aspects of that seems to come to the forefront or be more prominent in terms of where your attention seems to settle, and certain other aspects sort of recede to the background and are less prominent. But they're present, and because they're present, and because you are actually attending to them, even if to a apparently lesser degree, you're already there, you already are seeing it, so you can kind of look. And there's no way to say how you can do that. Like I said, these kind of quasi-hypnotic mechanisms is one way, or perhaps one aspect of the way that happens.
But in terms of your experience of that capacity, your ability to see the multi-dimensional aspects of your experience,
right,
is what enables you to accentuate one, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's true for anyone, but yeah, sure. I am aware of the presence of of this infinity of different coexistent dimensions, and I'm aware of sort of focusing on certain assaults of them in a given instant that accentuates them. But all the others are also there, sort of in the background. Like when I look at you, I can also see the TV there, even though I'm not looking at it. But if I want, I can even if I'm looking at you, I can put my attention on the TV, and I'm actually more aware of the TV than your face, even though I'm looking at you, and then I can shift my awareness back, and all of a sudden I'm emphasizing your face. How do I do that? I couldn't possibly say. But it's a matter of accessing or tuning into something that is present, but perhaps to a lesser degree in a given instant, and and that tuning in makes it present to a greater degree.
What do you mean by the eye that does that?
Well, I can't say. The eye doesn't do it. There's some miraculous whim or arbitrary notion or what have you. But that's the same thing that does anything you do. When you say something, why do you say it? What's the you that says it? It shows up, and it requires sufficient dominance that it seems to be acted on.
Is it like a phenomenology that you trace out?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Like it's like you're constantly saying, well, this is how things arise, or rise in awareness, or.
No, I don't. There's no abstraction of it. The actuality is right here. I don't need to abstract it. I don't need to say it. I am it. I am it. I'm this instantaneous flashing forth of an infinity of perspectives. You are too. Just notice that that's the case. And you notice that's the case by, if you notice whatever your dominant narrative is, notice that there's also a vast range of alternatives that have nothing to do with your dominant narrative that are actually concretely present in your experience by degrees. And then once you're aware that that's there, tune into anything that seems to have any degree of availability. And the more you are aware of this whole multidimensional panorama, the more obvious and actual it is. It's nothing that you're not doing all the time, every instant. Why do you attend to whatever you're attending to in any instant? It's not, and if you look closely, it's not necessarily a fixed, locked in, predestined series of steps where now I'm aware of this and then my awareness arbitrarily jumps over that and I'm a passive slave to that. There's some seemingly aspect of participation in that somewhere.
I can feel fatalistic about my experience.
Sure you can, but you don't have to. That's just a narrative. And then that narrative is arrived at by sort of a hypnotic mechanism. I'm stuck, I'm fatal, this is all pre-occurring, it's an inevitable chain of events, one thing follows another. And if this has happened, then that's going to happen, and it's, like you're stuck here in the chute, and that's where you're gonna go, down the chute. But it's not necessarily like that.
On the other extreme, I can feel like, which is more boring, is to feel like I can be master of my destiny and I can.
But that's like sort of big abstractions, master of your destiny. It's much more immediate and personal than that. You just discover the vast range of possibilities for how you focus your attention. Like you can look at yourself as a subtle energy system and slowly move up the chakras of your experience, and you can tune into that. I mean, it's all basically sort of hypnotic or pseudo hypnotic or whatever. Now I'm with the the sensory realm. I'm moving up, and I'm going to attend to the next layer up, and it's like a rich sea of energy, like an ocean or a pool of energy, and then I move up, and you arrive at a place of sort of constellated light rays and so on. And so you can do this and you do that, and then having done that and have that as an actual chain of experience that you sort of navigated, then you can do something else. You can say, now I'm going to read your aura, and again, it's hypnotic. I say, how do I do it? I don't know. I'm just going to do it because I can. And as soon as you think I can, bang, the mind does it. In other words, something happens that feels like that, and so on. And then you say, now I'm going to, feel the whole flow of the events of my life as a multidimensional, flowering, and then bang, you just do it. Again, you don't need it. There's no problem. You don't need to construct it. You don't need to know how to do it. You just let the hypnotic nature of mind do all the work for you, do all the heavy lifting. You just have to, you just hit on the seed, and then bang, the mind actualizes it. And if you do enough of these kinds of experiments that diverge from each other, you see how arbitrary they are, and how, yeah, I can go to the seventh chakra. Yeah, I can go to someone else's aura. Yeah, I can go to, the far side of the moon. Yeah, I can do this. I can do that. I can tune into, I can go beyond my personality. So I can do all these things, and you just do them by having experience of having done that through these kinds of explorations. And by doing that sufficiently, you get a sense of, wow, there's a really vast range of sort of jumping off points that I can tune into, and whatever they actually are, they end up with something. The chakras don't need to be real, and you don't need to know what they are, but when you do it, something happens. it's like feel, go to your seventh chakra and feel what the universe of the seventh chakra is. You just do it. You don't need to know what it is. You just do it, and something happens. And so you do enough of these kinds of experiments, and you get, wow, there's a really sort of apparent implications of experiential environment that it's possible to tune into. And so in that instant, even if I'm not doing it right now, I know that it's all there.
There are endless places to go.
Endless. I mean, you can do these kind of constructed examples just as a kind of exercise of just sort of limbering up. And after a while, you realize there's places you can go to where you don't know where you're going. You just go there, and you don't even have a. It's not like I'm going to this or I'm going to do that. I'm going somewhere now, and you go, and where am I? Wow. And then after a while, you learn it's all the same. You do enough of this, you end up enough far-flung panoramas of these dimensions, and then you come back to your normalcy, and you look at that, and you say, "Oh, this is just another one of those far-flung weird panoramas." But all these are just, yogic exercises, yogic tricks. Huh?
Jaws.
Yeah.
And they seemed, well, to me, they seemed really important at one time or another.
Yeah, well, they are important, but what's important really ends up being the revelation that all of these alternatives are just as real as anything. There's nothing but reality, and it can look like anything.
The weirdest, just for me, was astral travel.
Yeah.
It seemed like there was a concrete reality.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you do it. You go to your astral body, and then head off somewhere, and then see where you are. You don't have any preconception of what that means or what it's going to look like. You just do it. Something happens. It doesn't matter what it is, and it doesn't matter what you call it, but something happens.
You arrive.
Yeah, you arrive, and then you do something else, and something else happens, and you arrive. So you're continually arriving. And where do you arrive? Here.
It's the problem with these.
I'm sorry.
This is for me the problem with these explorations is dropping the doubter.
Don't worry about it. Forget about the doubter. Just do it anyway. Treat it like a game.
Maybe I'm bad with games, I don't know.
Well, treat it like a fantasy. I'm sure you can fantasize. Just say, I'm going to pretend that I'm investigating my subtle body now. I'm going to pretend that I'm.
It seems that fantasies, I mean, we all, I think, our thoughts are fantasies, but the mind seems to be very unimaginative.
That's okay. It can seem to be unimaginative, but it's actually very imaginative. You're just not qualifying. You have perhaps a rigid expectation.
The patterns are just so consistent.
Yeah. Wait, do you ever watch movies? Well, when you watch movies, you're fantasizing. You're fantasizing that the implications of the patterns that you're perceiving are actually happening to some degree. So that's exactly the same fantasizing that you do use for any of these kinds of experiments. So I'm gonna imagine a movie now where I'm on astral travel. I'm gonna imagine a movie where my astral body is rising up out of my body, and it's moving up into the light. You just do that. Worry about whether it's a movie or whether you're imagining it, or even if it doesn't get very concrete, or it doesn't matter. You just do that, and something happens.
What is that something?
Well, you can't say. That's the point. After a while, you learn the absurdity and the childishness of all these qualifications, pretending you can know what anything is. I mean, that's what cements and solidifies, the sort of materialist reality. This is me and this is my body and I'm in this space-time continuum and I'm in this location, I'm in this point in time and so on and so forth. All it's a fantasy. It's no less of a fantasy than that you're in your astral body heading off into the light. But because it's a fantasy that you've repeated and gotten very, very, very good at doing, that makes it seem more concrete. But you can use the same mechanism to make any fantasy seem concrete, just by repetition and investment, by exploration.
There's a catch in that. But if you go there often enough, you get to expect that.
Sure.
You get to expect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, you can concretize anything. But this is why it's very important to do it intelligently. And the intelligence can see through or see the absurdity of the partialization, because as soon as you qualify something, the intelligence will say, yeah, but there's more than that here. It's not just that.
I mean, I've done it. I'm not really necessarily concerned with my astral body.
No, whatever. I mean,
I have definitely, I've told you, I can get to that big tree where there was a hawk there for a long time. I haven't seen it, but I've gotten there and I've gotten back here.
Sure.
And what I've noticed from that is I can start seeing how even just like my walk from the bedroom to the kitchen is something very similar.
Yeah, exactly.
It
is. And that's the point, is to see that there's nothing, it's not like all of these things are imagination, but this is real. After you do enough of this, you see it's all the same. It's just experience with an implicative perspective that makes it seem to be a certain way. I mean, you do this every night when you go to sleep and dream. Every time you dream, that's exactly what happens. You're in a fantasy, and the implication is that you're actually there. It's actually the way it is, to whatever degree. So we've had very, very, deep. We have a deep history of experiencing these alternate, dimensions. And you can do it when you're from the waking state deliberately. You can think of it as like going off into a partial dream or something, going off into a fantasy or what have you. But after a while, you realize that the qualification of fantasy or not is just really arbitrary.
Is this sort of another aspect of the pointer you gave about just feeling whatever sensory input you're getting, either you're seeing, just feeling into that?
Yeah, exactly. It's a way of noticing that there's more concretely within your experience than your qualification of it includes. So I can say, I'm seeing light, but if I really feel the light that is the presence of light, it completely transcends being something simple as seeing and some light that I know what light means. It's a miraculous, inconceivable, infinite actuality that is completely, absolutely and infinitely mysterious. And if the pretense that, but I'm just seeing light, my photons are hitting my retinas and activating my optic nerve and going into my brains and there's neurons. So the fuck what, It's like the actuality of this, the undeniable immediate actuality of this, is what it is, self-verifyingly, regardless of whatever kinds of explanations you want to throw at it. And the explanations just couldn't possibly capture it. And so all these kinds of exercises is just another way of exploring that principle. The principle that what you end up with experientially is beyond whatever you think it is. Whatever you do is beyond whatever you think you're doing or think you're going to do. Because if the actuality of experience, experiential actuality is always beyond whatever you describe it as. And it's very powerful to investigate that and discover for yourself that that's actually and undeniably true. By hook or by crook, I mean any old way that you can play with that.
Is there there's no end point to the investigation, but is there places where it seems that you're not, or somehow consciousness is not investigating enough?
No.
It
doesn't matter, you just do it.
But the second that I become aware of whatever that sensory is,
right,
there's a shift immediately.
What kind of shift? What do you mean? So shifts are fine. But again, the point is what happens, what you're doing and what happens.
Less clarity about, or less concreteness.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And understanding there's something beyond, which is the awareness. I don't know.
Sure.
But I don't know what that is.
It doesn't matter. The idea isn't to resolve it or to get an answer. The idea is just to do it. And even when you do these kinds of explorations, these kinds of experiments, what's actually happening will not be what you think is happening. And the depth and potency of what it's doing and what the effect is will not be what you think it is. Like you might
I don't have
think,
any thoughts. I mean, for me, the instant I do it in any exercise, it's just feel like I'm in a meditative space.
Great, cool.
Thoughts stop.
Cool. That's right. But that's not the point of it. The point of that it's irrelevant what happens, what seems to happen. The result of this is unimaginable. You can't possibly have foreknowledge of where this investigation will take you. And you can't assess how efficiently it is taking you there, so to speak. The point is just to do it, and it will ultimately surprise you completely. So don't worry about what seems to happen, or how well it's happening or not, or what to do about it or anything. You just be with this in whatever way your inspiration takes you, your genius takes you, and then let it go. That's the whole cycle. And then the cycle happens again. And the cycle happens again. And that's what yoga looks like. These sort of events of this cycle happening. It can happen instantaneously or over the period of seconds or minutes or hours, it doesn't matter. But you just be with this, and maybe you're gonna call up in thought or something. You just okay, cool, you let it go. So that's the whole cycle right there. That's the practice of yoga. And but what's really happening and how well it's happening and where it's going is completely intangible. So you might think nothing's happening. You might think, well, this is stupid, but it's not true.
Or you might think something is happening, but it's
and that's not true either. But it doesn't matter. You don't need to think it or not think it. It just doesn't matter what happens. You just let it go. You just be very playful and loose and gentle with it, and let it happen the way it happens.
Seems like increasingly, the more that the yoga progresses, if I'm in a position where I can explore certain areas, I get kind of whacked over the head with all these weird, like, metaphysical agendas and guilt and things that I'm supposed to be doing here that correlate to up. And they seem kind of contrary to the yoga, like I put my script down and I'm like trying to walk off set.
Right. There's endless harmonics of the energies, and they're not what they seem. So whatever, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. However it seems to be, it's not really that. And you can't get to the bottom of what it is anyway. So if it seems to be a certain way, it's unimportant. And if it seems to be provocative or disturbing in some way, that's unimportant. Because again, the whole thing will transpire, and pretty soon it'll be in the past, and you won't have to worry about it anyway. So. I mean, the whole thing about these experiments is they aren't what they seem. So it doesn't, that being the case, it doesn't matter what they seem to be like. But there's infinite harmonics and complexities and spin-offs and ramifications. And if you have a sensitive intelligence, that can become very obvious. But that's unimportant. That's just revealing the divergence of the radiance. The radiance is continually spinning off from itself, like lightning that forks and then forks some more and then forks some more. So it's a flash, but the flash goes everywhere.
Apprehension of the will is nothing but realizing that there's nothing but that.
Yeah.
And that's it. There's no other.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't understand those.
Will naively is held to be something, and eventually it's discovered that there's nothing but. And there can seem to be all sorts of apparent orientations and juxtapositions along the way of that, along the route of that discovery, but all that's unimportant again.
So that's connected to the Aleister Crowley, do what you wish, or something?
Yes. Do what thou wilt.
What is this about?
Huh?
I don't know.
It's unimportant. It's an involved sort of a interpretive context. And if you weren't interested in it, it's of no interest. It's got endless complexity and nuance, which is of no relevance to anything other than itself.
This is like the law of manifestation, or
Sorry?
is this like the law of manifestation or attraction or whatever it's called?
Not so much.
The same as the Tao, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Could you explain that out?
Yes, please.
The tree in the courtyard. The Tao is very easy. It's opposite from the up. You have the up and you have the down.
But the Tao just keeps on going on.
Well, you go down far enough and you end up up. The important thing with yoga is to do it. Doesn't matter how to do it. If you don't know how to do it, just pretend you do and do it anyway. And by pretending, you'll learn how to.
I think I'm going to meditate on pretending.
Pretend to meditate, not
Next few
pretending.
days.
Pretend to meditate, not pretending.
Right, pretend for that. So I remember when I was a kid, I would pretend like that my parents were fighting, or I was pissed off at my mom or something. I would just close my eyes, and I would sort of pretend that
Sure.
nothing was going on, and it
Sure,
worked.
that's
I mean,
right.
it sort of put me out there somewhere.
Yeah, that's why we're all bonkers.
we're all what?
It's bonkers.
Oh.
Because we're good at creating alternate realities in the face of the warped behavior of our parents.
I just close my eyes and it's not happening.
So, like central reality and like the reality of thought and stuff. Then those are we can say that those are just like a few dimensions and in an infinite set of dimensions of experience.
You can see it that way, but each of them is also an infinite dimensions in themselves. It's infinitely fractal. So you look at any tiny little subportion of it, and that itself is an infinity. But again, don't worry about trying to structuralize it or quantify it, or map it. It's not like that. Any point, and wherever that is, so you take a point in, say, in your visual field, or whatever, is actually a doorway to infinity and infinite difference within and of itself. So it doesn't matter what your jumping off point is, it actually goes to everything. So therefore, it's not important to structuralize it and say, oh, well, the senses are here and they're lesser, and then there's the mind, and then there's, it's like, it's not really like that because it's not organized hierarchically. It's organized fractally. And there's no sense, there's no bottom or top or center or edge. So any point is a center that opens to the entirety. And that'll be our closing line for tonight.